Cutting edge technology is revolutionizing the patient doctor healthcare experience. Today I have Lance Owens, Chief Medical Information Officer, University of Michigan, Health West, Josh Wilda, Chief Digital and Information Officer, University of Michigan, go Michigan, Health West, Ken Harper, Vice President and GM, Healthcare Virtual Assistants and Ambient Clinical Intelligence, Nuance. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning. Thank you for having us.
So the question is, which one of you guys can explain to me how clinical documentation works?
So clinical documentation is really the account of your interaction with the healthcare system. So most of the time that's with a provider. And when you have that visit with your provider, there's a lot of information that is generated out of those discussions. And that information has to get into the electronic medical record or the note in some fashion. Those notes over time kind of tell your story of your journey in healthcare, and that is commonly referred to as the clinical documentation. And over the years, that used to be, on paper with pens, and then it went to checklists, and then maybe transcription, and then the EMR entered and the computer entered the exam room, and that added some benefits but a whole list of challenges as well. And then we went to voice dictation, and now we are entering in the new phase of ambient voice technology. And that is really going to remove the burdens of those other tools to get information into the record, because that was an active process. So now providers and patients can really have a more meaningful, focused, and deeper relationship within that visit because all of that information is getting ingested and put into the note behind the scenes.
Now, which one of you can tell me the benefits for physicians and patients using this technology?
Yeah, so in that exam room, when we digitized the patient record, went from paper to a computer, the computer entered the room. And while technology has a ton of benefits in our lives, it can also pull our attention. Also, it can become the focus of what's going on as opposed to that interaction. So first and foremost, in that room, that technology then becomes a tool, but a passive tool that's listening into the background, listening to the conversation of what's going on with the patient provider, and taking the words of both patient provider and creating that clinical documentation note. So on the provider side, they don't have the cognitive burden of when they leave that exam room having to remember what that conversation was about. We all have to remember as patients. While we want an individual experience, providers have a large patient panel. That's a lot of information to manage. And so it takes away the burden of them having to document, giving them more time to spend on managing the care of that patient as opposed to the administrative burdens of that care. It also allows them to focus more on their patient care team, on the practice. It allows us as administrators to use our providers to build even better clinical pathways within our organizations. On the patient side of things, the beauty of this is it creates that relationship again. What is that provider putting in that record? I can't see the screen. Are they really listening to me, or are they doing something else? Now it's more of a, I'm focused on the patient feels that interaction. Healthcare for all of us is all about trust. You have to have that trust if you're going to listen to someone. We have to know you care before we listen to your care. And this allows that care to happen yet again in a sort of more of that conversational relationship sort of way. Technology becomes then a part of it, but as a tool to help with that patient-provider relationship, not something that becomes the focus and all of us in that room feel the burden of that computer.
Now, how has it improved the patient-physician experience?
Yeah, there are many examples of how it does that. And as a physician and daily user of this technology, I can tell you it's a tremendous impact of how we interact. I oftentimes say that, we are involved in our patients' lives at some of the most inopportune times. There's some tragedy that's going on. They're sick, they're tired, they're hurting, they're scared, they're dying. And sometimes they don't know how to feel because they don't know what of any of these are happening. And so by for us as providers, knowing that information that we're going to elicit out of that visit or visits is getting captured on the back end, and we don't have that burden of doing that, it allows for a more relaxed, focused, eye-to-eye conversation, which allows us to more meaningfully guide them through, whatever healthcare issue they're dealing with.
Wow. When you said, they're feeling the pain, they're sick, And especially if they're experienced dying, that's kind of hits a little bit.
Healthcare
Can
is a
you
very
share?
serious issue.
Yeah, it is very serious. Now, can you share examples of how it positively affected the healthcare experience in a real world setting?
Yeah, so we have hundreds of healthcare organizations today that have adopted this technology. The solution is called Nuance DAX, stands for Dragon Ambient Experience. And so we have a number of measurements that we see across all these organizations that are bringing it into their exam rooms. We see things like your typical provider getting a couple of hours freed up of time through the course of a week. And that time is time that you can spend focusing more on the patient to give them the very best care. It's time that you can spend managing your panel of patients that you have within your practice. For the patient, we have a lot of data that we're seeing where the patient's actually experiencing a very different relationship with their provider as they're going in, because that eye contact is there, that trust is there. As patients, we're all patients. We've all had that experience where you walk in and as you're being treated, the physician is typing in the keyboard in front of you. And even though they're trying their best to give you the very best outcome they can, the fact is they're distracted because they're trying to get information into the computer. And so these are the types of the outcomes for physicians, giving them time back to do what they enjoy doing and bring back the joy of medicine, combined with, from a patient perspective, you're getting a much better personal experience when you go see your doctor. Those are the benefits we're beginning to see and measure across many healthcare organizations across the US. And this is very quickly going to become the new normal in healthcare over the next couple of years.
Between Josh and Ken, I'm not sure about Lance. You might know this answer. Last night, I got to attend a session on AI. Is AI integrated into any of this?
Yes, as a matter of fact, what AI is doing in the background is it's gathering that conversation and pulling out the parts that, in a normal conversation, they might be talking about a vacation or something like that. That isn't medically, clinically relevant to what's going on with the patient care. It extracts all of that from that record and really puts in the voice of what's going on. So that artificial intelligence using machine learning is actually learning how does the provider prefer their note to be. Because it's not just about the note is just done. It really is the provider is then able to review that note to understand even more so about that information, but also editing it, because that note is not just a story for that patient provider. That note also becomes that continuum of care for other referred providers, or if we ever end up in an emergency department or somewhere else, they have a good record of it. So that machine learning behind the scenes is capturing that information, is really succinctly putting that as a medically relevant note and pulling out those pieces that are just noise, if you will, from the medical record perspective. And so you're seeing the machine learning behind the scenes become more and more personalized to even the provider, that it's not the provider is forced in a canned note template. They want it to be a story as well. And so providers are seeing their voices actually in the notes of how they would have talked to the patient or how they are talking to the patient. And the AI is able to capture it, understand what is relevant, what isn't, and provide that into the medical record. Some of us have also have experienced being in the room with a loved one. That AI is able to succinctly understand who is doing the talking. Is it Josh? Is it the spouse? Is it the interpreter talking in the room? Now, without that technology, the provider's burden is actually to understand all of those personalities that were in the room. The AI and the machine learning is using that, relating it to who is talking and actually documenting that in the behind the scenes for the provider. So it's very, very interesting to see where this technology is going to go as far as a useful tool, and where AI is going to be there not to provide providers with the decisions that need to be made, but providing them with the tools to provide insights into what that conversation was about to help guide them more in their clinical decision making.
Guys, we've been talking about the history of where we've come from and where we are. Anywhere from talking, taking notes, typing into a computer, and then now the voice, and here we've got AI. Where's all this leading us to? What is the future of healthcare?
That's a good question. I think that what you see in the future of healthcare is going to hopefully get back to using this technology to actually bring back that patient-provider relationship. So in the case of DAX and that technology, not only the note being performed, but if Dr. Owens were to say, Josh, I want to prescribe you this med, that also has to get in the medical record somewhere. So to queue up orders for those patients. where we want to bring it into the inpatient setting. Not only is there a big burden on provider burnout, nursing burnout is also very important. And how can we use it from the nursing relationship? And then where does ambient technologies go for even some of those other interactions that you might have with someone who's registering you, or I'm calling to schedule or ask some questions. So I think what it really is going to be doing is using that technology to what it was meant to be, not be the focus of the relationship, to enhance the relationship behind the scenes. It'll also springboard into visual AI, being able to watch patients in exam rooms. Are you a fall risk? And I'm about to get up. Alert someone immediately without having a nurse or an alarm be delayed. And so you're going to see this ambient be passive in the background, but be very powerful into what it's providing all of us as caregivers in the industry, as far as insights into the patient care to drive great decisions to make that experience with patients long-lasting and trusting.
Yeah, if you think of the abilities of artificial intelligence as the size of Mount Everest, we're using about that much of it right now. And so this technology is really going to take off and really help us take much better care of our patients in a much more personal way.
I like what you said about Mount Everest, because when I was in that session last night, we were talking about content and data. I was like, wow, how huge is that right now? You're talking globally. How huge is that? It's just amazing. Where can our viewers go for more information?
Yeah, if you check out nuance.com/ambient, you can find more about the Dragon Ambient experience, or DAX, how it works, and learn more about all those outcomes that we're measuring across hundreds of healthcare organizations.
You know, Lance, Josh, Ken, I actually am envisioning myself. I'm laying in the bed. You guys are standing there over me, talking to me, and all I see is the matrix around us. That's all I see is the line of the matrix around us. That's what I kind of feel we're headed towards. Guys, yes, I have an imagination. Thank you for your time today. I really appreciate it. It's been very interesting, because I've always wondered, and I was in a room with my brother this past summer, or last summer, as he had colon cancer, and I saw the technology that was in the room and what he was wearing, and I just thought it was amazing. It's just really amazing. Thank you again for joining us on Morning Blend.
Thank you.
Thank you.